Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Rick's Record Collection. For this episode, I wanted to talk about 12 records from the new wave 1980s. Now, by no means is this a best list, but these are 12 records that resonate or mean a lot to me from that decade. And I qualified it new wave or the new wave era. Okay. Because not everything was new wave back in the 80s, although that was the predominant music back then. And to qualify this further, um, we were at the mercy of what we knew, what we found out, what we read, and what we heard, what was told to us. So a lot of it was word of mouth, some of which we read about. Okay, since there was no internet back in the day. And these 12 records that I want to share with you, they meant a lot in terms of they opened new horizons for me. It changed the way I look at certain things in music or even in production. And to this day, they remain solid favorites and it's something that I play a lot to this day. Okay? So we'll get it started. This is not in chronological order, mind you. This are I just pulled them out, and it was easy to pull them out, to be honest, because I already knew what to pull out. I'll probably do another episode, music from the 80s. This time I would exclude the new wave stuff, the British new wave. And although there's one here that's from the American side of things, and there could have been others, but I just limited it to 12. Okay. By no means are these the only 12 that meant a lot to me back in the 80s. It's just that the number that I'm working with. Okay. Let's start off with this record, The Gift from The Jam, their final album. I can tell you where I bought this one. Um, at the PCI Bank Arcade in Green Hills. Even back in the 80s, it seemed old, very old. And, it was more known for its small shops. In fact, doon nag-start yung Comic Odyssey. Phil Barr had a branch over there. And there was another comic book shop, Chris Charette. And dun ako namimili rin ng comic books back in the early 80s, no? And Philmars, obviously, and Comic Odyssey, which came a little later, catered only to comic books. Chris Chareth specialized in back issues. They were the first comic book specialty store in the Philippines to specifically cater to back issues. But its proprietor, Jun Miguel, hindi marunong mag-grade. 'Di ba? Kahit hindi maganda yung kondisyon, pinipresyo niya kung ano yung near mint, 'di ba? And or mint. And that was it just made it too expensive, 'di ba? But because it was so hard to get comic books back in the Philippines, unless you went to Clark Air Base or Subic Naval Base, it was really hard to get comic books. But ang sabi ko nga, it wasn't just comic books. They also sold records because June was into music, was heavily into music. In fact, he recruited me to join his band. And June, at the time, I was what? In my early teens. And June was in his 30s. 30s. So they were all older people, and I joined them in this band. And it was very hard. Kasi hindi naman ako yung that confident back then. So it was very hard, and we would rehearse in this studio here in Kamuning. Tama, sa Kamuning, di ba? Malapit siyang towards EDSA. Doon kami nag-ensayo. And minsan, pag meron kaming tinugtugan dito malapit today it's a vintage car specialty repair shop. There was this old bar there where people would play. It looked like a barn. Yes, a barn. One of those Wild West barns, or saloons rather, not barn, saloons. And I remember we played there once, and I was just playing bass with them. And ang ang music na gusto kasi nila is what we call today classic rock. So back then it was the norm, and that's what they wanted to play. But I was this kid already into punk and new wave. I had left the 70s rock, hard rock, or metal in favor of new wave and punk. But it's not like I didn't know the songs. I knew them, maybe not all of them, because they wanted to do some Allman Brothers, and I wasn't familiar with the Allman Brothers back then. Hindi pa naman ganun ka-broad yung horizons ko. Um, you know, but I left them after two shows, and siguro mga at least five rehearsals. No? I left them. Kasi hindi fit, hindi talaga fit. And they would offer me beer and I wasn't drinking. It was just such an odd fit. But anyway, I got this record of June's Place. So I was selling it for 110 pesos. That was a lot of money back then in the early 80s. And 1982, itong album nito. And there was a lot of buzz about this album, The Jam. I was reading in the trade magazines, whether it's Scream, Rolling Stone, Hit Parader, Circus, those were the magazines back in the day. Even in Jingle magazine, nababanggit itong album. So, the record that he was selling was made in Hong Kong at the time. It was made in Hong Kong. I bought the record. I remember playing this, and when it hit the song Pressures, that was on the third song, side one. Grabe yung full force of iba yung production ito. It's very in your face. It's close to live, and that's what I love about this album. It's almost like a live production. They were just really in your face. It was produced by Peter Wilson in the Jam. Grabe, it resonated with me like, wow, diba? Ito yung album ng damang-dama talagang may sipa, may kick siya talaga. No? And of course, diba, it's known for the single Town Called Malice. But as much as I love Town Called Malice, there are other songs that I really, obviously Precious is something, diba? Ghosts, great album. And, you can see at this time the music of the Jam is changing. I didn't have any other albums of the Jam. This is my first album of the Jam. I had to pick up everything retrospectively. But DCRJ would play them, but not too much. Not too much. So how did I learn of them? Well, just by reading them, and then eventually getting this at Christian, and then backtracking, buying records in Hong Kong. Eventually, my copy that was pressed in Hong Kong, I replaced it with the UK version and the US version. Because I remember binili well, kasi not many people had this back in the day. And I remember Jingle, si Butch Maniego, the late Butch Maniego of Jingle, he's a writer for Jingle. He cajoled me into selling or trading this. I don't know what I got for it. Yung Rockpile, I can tell you what I got for Rockpile. But this record, I don't remember what I let it go for. And unlike Rockpile, which I regretted selling to Cesc Rodriguez, ito hindi naman. Kasi alam ko naman makakuha ako. And I knew that I could still get Rockpile. Except that to this day, although I did get Seconds of Pleasure, it's not the one that came with the bonus. Still have been unable to get that. It came with a 7-inch EP that was part of the cover design of Rockpile's Seconds of Pleasure. But this one, alam ko makakuha ako ng kapalit. So, and yes, I did get a replacement. But I love this record because it foreshadowed what kind of music that Paul Weller was getting into when he put up the Style Council a few years later. And I love the Jam, but Style Council was something even more. I thought that it affected me in more ways than the Jam ever did. But I always loved this album because I got into Curtis Mayfield. I got into Northern Soul, but more so when I got into the Style Council. This forced me to really look into black music. But an amazing album, and I love it. Again, three-man piece, diba? But they just played really awesome. Hmm. I guess I should segue into this album, Cafe Bleu. And at the time, I didn't know what was gonna go next for Paul Weller until I heard my ever-changing moods in the American Top 40. And I remember where it debuted, number 38 in the American Top 40 charts. Um, Kasi I was taping it, I learned that from my classmate and one of my best friends, Sec Guard. We would tape the 80/40 every week on 99.5. It was our way of getting new music and all that. So, and at the time, it was the fast version, the up-tempo version of my ever-changing moods that hit the American charts. And I was just so excited. I thought it was amazing. And I never heard anything quite like that. So, but when I got Cafe Bleu, it was the slow version because this is the UK version. The American version that featured Mick Talbot and Paul Weller drinking coffee by French cafe. It contained the faster version. So, but as disappointed as I was that I got the piano version by Ever Changing News, this was a terrific album. My God, Mixed Blessings obviously was used by Going Bananas as its theme, but everything, the Paris match featuring Tracy Thorn with Everything But the Girl, I just fell in love with it. And I started looking and researching lounge music and even, because it was an entry point also into jazz. Although I listened to jazz before, but a different kind of jazz, even French jazz. It was just amazing. And even a gospel, I thought was ahead of its time. It's the first track out of side two gospel. And kasi nag-hip hop. Nag-hip hop, nag-rap sila. Imagine that, no? Even in the early 80s, they were doing this stuff. It's not like rap is new because in the 70s, you had Sugar Hill Gang with rappers delight. But still, what they were doing, I think I wrote about this. It's not that I read it somewhere. I thought that they were one of those who paved the way for acid jazz and its melding of jazz, R&B, rap, and hip hop, and soul. So this is a great album, and you know, Steve White on drums, a drumming prodigy. All of a sudden, I became a fan of Nick Talbot because when he was with Dexys Midnight Runners, I'm not really a fan of Dexys Midnight Runners. I don't even know any of the records. Diba? Sure, I like Come On Eileen, but not, okay lang. But it's not like I'm going to go out of my way to get the record. But this one, it also, I think I've said it before, punk rock was sort of a history book for me because they talked about a lot of themes that were not, you could not read in history or current events classes in school. But punk rock kept made me aware of what was going on, social injustice. And um, lalo na to, itong album nito, because Paul Miller is very political. And imagine a title, Dropping Bombs in the Grabe, di ba? At such an early age for me, it seemed something like a terroristic thing. And as much as it struck me. It really struck me. And I tried to understand his views. I read a bit later on. Diba? So, but even so, I just, I whether I agree with his politics or not, I listen to the songs, I memorize them. I try to understand. I think it should be that way. But then Head Start from Happen has such a beautiful, beautiful up tempo and quirky song. You're the best thing, of course, diba? Yun. So to this day, the Style Council remains one of my all-time favorite bands. They are the only band that I collect, not only the albums, but also the EPs and the 7 and 12 each seasons. They are the only band that I do that. The others I don't. But sila lahat kinukuha ko. Every single release from the Style Council. I have around 40 plus records of theirs. 40 plus, can you imagine that? And I think I have a near, well, that's not even near complete. but I do have a lot. You know, I don't want to get any of the stuff that's it's split record. I don't want. I'm just was a style council of it. Um, from the jam to the style council and to this day, I'm a massive, massive ball fan. One record that popped out back then, that, so suddenly, this was released locally. Dance Craze, the best of British style line. And I had never heard of these bands, but I would see it in sa charts because Billboard magazine back in the day also printed the British charts, and we could see the band's names. I was very unfamiliar, but I only read of them because they were in the charts. I even could tell you what record labels they were on. Diba? But all of a sudden, this dropped one day from Upwards Records. And that was a life-changing moment for me because I discovered I was already into reggae, but not ska. I knew of ska, but not full-tone ska. And it it was hard to say at that age, you know, in 1981, I was still in grade seven. It's hard to dive back totally to the back, go back and learn other styles. So I had to start off with bands like these, the Bad Manners, Madness, Selected, the Specials, especially the Specials. Diba? I would start off with them and backtrack. But this album, my God, just I must have played it to death because I bought a second copy later on and a low quality. It was only about a few years later that I got the US and then the UK version, the Japanese version. The Japanese only later on in my lifetime. It's an older man. But I do wish I was able to save the Philippine pressing. So naghahanap ako, makakita ako, bibili ako talaga. No matter how poor the sound is. But you love it as only as a kid can. But this, if I was into reggae already, this really solidified my love for Jamaican music because it also got me into dub. Well, I can also credit Flash for that one because of Black Market Flash. And even their first album, their self-titled first album, got me to dub music. But this one was the one that cemented everything in Jamaica. So I had a really nice collection of reggae music, but this one forced me to listen to Rocksteady and all. I just fell in love with Jamaican. And I loved all these bands. Of the bands featured here, the Specials, the Beat, Bad Manners, Madness, Selector, Body Snatchers. Diba? Ang pinaka-favorite ko dito was Bad Manners. Diba? I love Bad Manners. And later on, that's when I gravitated towards the Specials even more. So yes, this is the foreign version kasi hindi English beat the beat ang nakalagay. The only reason why they added the English is for American audiences because they also had a band in the US called The Beat. But man, it's ska. In fact, with my own indie record label, nailabas namin yung Dance to Ska ng Dreamhouse. And it's that moment where I thought of this record, Dance Craze, that I even thought of Neighbors because yes, I got to put out a ska record, all because of this, and I love it to this day. Now, growing up as a die-hard devout Catholic, I still am. I'm a Catholic, and it was hard listening to stuff that was dark because it went against everything that I believed in. But there was this curiosity in me that I had to try. And Siouxsie and the Banshees, when you listen to them today, they seem so tame compared to others. But back then, it was horrific for me. It was frightening. There was this hint of the supernatural that really, really frightened me. And but of course, when you think about the song Hong Kong Garden, there's what's frightening about Hong Kong Garden. I don't even like the song to be honest. Like, but I love the really goth Siouxsie. And this is my first Banshees album, Kissing the Dreamhouse. And I bought this in Hong Kong. Bought this in Hong Kong. And I was looking for Once Upon a Time singles, their greatest hits, but I couldn't find it. And this was just out at the time. And we got it. You know, it had this psychedelic feel to it, psychedelic, surreal feel to this record. And then just listening to the songs, Cascade, Green Fingers, Obsession, She's a Carnival, Melt, and Painted Bird. And the song Slow Dive is here. Slow Dive is in this album. This is the song that the band Slow Dive got their name. Um, I fell in love with this. I felt like I was seduced by this album to the dark side. Oo, di ba? Then, wala eh. I surrendered to Siouxsie after that. No? Been a fan ever since. And it sort of like kicked down the doors for me, like, don't enter because this is the dark side or something like that. But I did. And Siouxsie the Banshees was my entry point to a lot of that dark stuff. And I love the cover. It's probably not the best cover. If I were to lay this out, it would be different. I'm very minimalist kasi by nature, medyo magulo. Pero I love it because it's entrancing, which is something about Siouxsie the Banshees music. And God, I love this. It's so psychedelic goth music, and I love it to this day. I still play it. And it's extra special union because Slow Dive got their name from this the song on the final song on this album. Slow Dive. Siouxsie and the Banshees fan to this day. I have all the records, complete discography. Now, I remember in the early years of MTV, they would play Wishful Thinking by China Crisis and Working with Fire and Steel. Um, and it was okay, but you know, I didn't even have their albums or the singles. It's just there. It wasn't until this album came, Flaunt and Imperfection. Um, it was just so radically different. This is the album that changes and defines a band forever. And in the case of China Crisis, this is it. It changed your sound forever. And they're associated with this album more than anything because one, they worked with the great Walter Becker of Steely Dan, who had such a massive, massive influence on the way this band sounded. So it had this jazzy feel to it. And they were so impressed by the work that he did that they even listed him as a member of China Crisis. And since then, that's been their sound, very Steely Danish. And God, I love this song. Um, I think it has aged well, really, really aged well. It sounds great. Um, this is an album, even back then, that I don't skip a track. I really don't skip tracks to begin with, but I even during the era where we were going to compact discs and all that, this is an album that I would play from end to end. And to this day, I constantly post about Flaunt the Imperfection. And the cool thing about what Walter Becker did was because he later appeared on an album by Filippo Lippi and also changed their sound. Diba? Galing. Galing talaga. I love this. My favorite track here is You Did Cut Me. Absolutely beautiful. But there's everything to like about it. And it seems like a perfect fit for this band from Liverpool to work with Steely Dan. Um, I love this to pieces. I think I have 4 copies of this: the US, the UK, the Canadian, and the Japanese versions of this album. And I love this record. All right, Echo and the Bunnymen. They're one of the few bands that I have from, hindi naman few, sorry, marami rin pala. This is one of the bands where I have all their albums, their studio albums. Kasi yung later on, in the 90s, towards the mid-90s, I had shifted to compact discs. Bumibili pa rin ng plaka, pero occasional na lang, hindi regular, mostly CDs na lang. It was easier to store. Then I thought the sound was great. I was in first year high school when I first heard this band. my best friend Nicky Ramos. Magkatabi classroom namin. And we were classmates in the grade school sa Ateneo. So I remember one day he brought this record. Brought this record. And he gave me his copy. Best friends nga. Binigay niya yung copy niya nito. And he said, you have to listen to this. Sabi ko, and then he said, he just got it. And it's like, oh, I just got it. Next time, no, 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 this is your copy. What do you mean this is my copy? No, I bought an extra copy for you. Diba? What a nice guy. I love Nick Ramos for him. And ano yun, recess yun, yung pinakita niya sa akin, inabot niya sa akin. And I was like, what a cover. And why crocodiles? Are there crocodiles? Ganun ka na even thinking. Actually crocodiles, diba? And I looked at, I remember looking at the cover and the back cover looking for crocodiles. And then when I got home that day, I played the record. The first song is going, and grabe the way it ends, and the bass line is absolutely amazing. And this was my entry into the Chameleons. They produced this album. Yeah. I love the post-punk sound of the Chameleons, that doom and gloom feel that they have, the small of sound that they have. And the Bunnymen had that very, a theme of post-Joy Division, post-punk sound, the doom and gloom. I loved it. It was spacey at the same time and so different. I was wondering, bakit iba yung mga sound ng mga British bands? What is it about them that makes them stand out and sound so different? But, wow, I just really didn't do it clean. They Rescue, Villiers Terrace, all that jazz and happy definitely. I just really gravitated towards this record. And then when the succeeding albums came out, Heaven Up Here, diba? Porcupine, and ganun din, Porcupine yung title. Pero hinahanap yung Porcupine sa cover. Wala, it was just an odd name. Then I saw a video of theirs around this time on MTV that seemed so weird, diba? But as weird as it was, I didn't like it. I was like Siouxsie and the Banshees, I was entranced by it. And when Heaven Up Here came out, yeah, I got it. And tuloy-tuloy, they're another band that I collect all their records and EPs. Pero ang difference is style council, 7 inches kasama tsaka 12 inch singles. Ito I get all the EPs and aside from their studio albums. Galing, lalo na nung time na nag-ano sila, nung they started putting out that Influenced by the Doors. Wow, I was absolutely amazed. Like when the Bunnymen Crocodiles. We talked about earlier how Walter Becker changed the sound of China Crisis. And, Joe Jackson, I didn't get his first 2 albums, his first 3 albums, I didn't. But, I mean, it was okay, but I just didn't get it. And then I picked this up. I remember looking at this from the record racks, music land, and I was like, wow, ano to? Diba? Does it have that feel, like look sharp, diba yung sapatos yung cover. Tapos yung beat crazy, diba? It was very animated, colorful, and all that. Ito, the jazz yung cover. And I bought it. And the moment the stylus hit the verdict, and then you could hear those thunderous drums, and then the brass coming in. It's just so majestic. And because of that, I started getting a lot of the old stuff of Joe Johnson. And this totally changed the sound. Totally changed it. And I loved it. I poured over the liner notes in the back cover, and it's well written. Said I wish I could write something like this. And Chacha Loco. Well, I didn't get to the Chacha Loco right much later. We did. Obviously, the big song here is "You Can't Get What You Want Till You Know What You Want," and I love it to this day, especially the extended version. Lowisida, that starts off side 2. Absolutely love it. I would think of Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, and all of that. Happy Day, my number two, grabe. Even Heart of Ice, there's something about it. And recently I got to interview Joe Jackson's bassist, Graham Maybe. That was a thrill because, well, I'm a fan of his bass playing, and I always thought that this was an underrated album, really good. And we talked about it. The work around this and how it astounded him was that they put out such a beautiful, beautiful record. And look at them on the style, very old school, very 50s, 60s jazz and the thing. Even the pictures and all that. I just love it. A band that I got into from the moment I heard them was the Police. Diba? Outlandos de Amor, Regata de Blanc, Zenyatta, Mondatta, Ghost in the Machine, and of course, Synchronicity. You would think that my favorite albums would probably be Synchronicity or Ghost in the Machine. But no, my favorite album from the Police is Zenyatta Mondatta. Although the one song I cannot stand is the Do Do Do. Seems so silly to me, but okay lang. I like this album resonates with me because it explored all sorts of Middle Eastern music. And that just really, really intrigued me. I started looking into Middle Eastern music. Diba? And this is the last album where the Police just really, mix their reggae influence with world music. This is a world music album. They they veered from the real white man's reggae to something more worldly and to love. By the time they got to Ghost in the Machine, there were a lot of synthesizers and it just wasn't. Yes, there were really good songs there. Everything She Does is Magic, Spirits in the Material World, but I missed the white man's reggae sound that they had. Dito, hindi mo na masasabing white man's reggae. It's world music. And may reggae influence pa rin. Diba? Um, this is where I became a solid fan. To this day, been a fan also not only of Sting's songwriting, but even also of Andy Summers' guitar playing. And moreover, Stuart Copeland's incredible drum. Getting Stuart Copeland. So, Zenyatta Mondatta. I remember looking for Egyptian jazz records, and I was able to get some Egyptian jazz records. Even Middle Eastern music, and I love it. I think it's really great. So along with the style council, if the style council forced me to look at the black music, this forced me to look at Middle Eastern works. Galing. Okay, Steve McQueen from Prefab Sprout. I love him. I was entering freshman year in college when this came out. And sa Sam Goody Binilito, sa Ann Arbor, Michigan. And obviously, Appetite was a top 40 hit, so that's how I learned about Prefab Sprout. Said about getting this. So I have the Steve McQueen is the British title. My Two Wheels Good is the American type. So I have both. And one of the things that I'm impressed most about this record is its production. Hindi lang malinis, pero naririnig mo lahat yung instruments. And every time I listen to it, there's something new. There's something new that is hidden between. It's not too layered, but it's layered. It sounds weird. You just have to listen to it. It just sounds parang ang dami nangyari, pero hindi siya umaagaw dun sa iba. In my mind, this is one of the perfect productions. And it's something that I adopted later on in my life once I returned to music and producing music. Being minimalist na nga ako sa design, lalo na sa music, di ba? Parang uh, malinis, ayoko ng cluttered, ay gusto ko naririnig mo lahat. And this record is just amazing. This Prefab Sprout also brought me back. If, 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 if the style council got me to James Brown and all of that, it's not like I didn't hear James Brown. I did, but I dug James Brown even more because of the style council. This one got me into Gershwin. Prefab Sprout got me into Gershwin. Became a big Gershwin fan. So, and grabe ang songwriting, especially lyrics and appetite. Wow, Paddy McAllen, one of his generation's best songwriters. And, I swore by this band. And, since I became a fan of theirs when this came out in 85, thereabouts, I became a fan and I've never stopped being a fan. Alam mo, nung nasa States ako working at the Virgin Records Times Square, yung solo album niya, I Troll the Megahertz, came out on CD and I got it. It was in the import rack kasi hindi siya available sa US. You had to get it in the import bins. And I remember since I had the late night shift, I was playing I called it Troll the Megahertz dun sa DJ's booth sa baba. And I remember one of the night managers saying, "Say, stop playing the radio. You're going to put people to sleep." I said, "It's not a radio. It's a record." Well, whatever it is, you're going to put people to sleep. Play something lively. But I finished first the title track, the monstrous title track that's like 22 minutes long. And then I started playing something more alive. But, the reason I did that is because ang linis ng production ng Prefab spot. And lumalabas lahat yung galing ng banda. I think I appreciated Neil Conti as a drummer, and I would really swear by Neil Conti. And even Wendy Smith's voice, which were like Quicksilver, dadapulan na ngayon biglang nag-disappear sa ether. Diba? Galing. I love this. Absolutely. And look at that Marlon Brando, feel of a cover. Ganda like. Towards when I was in college, I did not like the synthesizer sound of Bleu even more. I really went back to the guitar bands. And I remember when I was sitting in our tambayan, sa bench. At the time you were in next outside the admin building. And we had two benches. And one of my batchmates, Omar Reyes, came over carrying two records. And he said, "Hey, listen to this. Patrick, listen to this." And it was REM, Murmur, their album Murmur, their debut album. And then Hatful of Knowledge from this film. And I took it home. Kasi at the time, naghihiraman. Pareho na ako kayong maingat sa plaka. So, okay lang magpahiram kay Omar. And ganun din siya sa akin. But I would soon stop that. Not because of Omar, but because someone else. And when I got home, I played this. And then the moment the stylus hit William, it was really nothing. What is this? The guitar work, Johnny Marr was, even back then, it was such an exceptional talent. Grabe. And Dwayne Morrissey wrote songs. Just really, really incredible. And then sinabayan ko pa ng REM, ng Murmur na, my God, it's so like the birds and all that. Ang lalim. Tapos gitara pa. And they sometimes had a goth feel to themselves, even if it was southern fried rock and all that, alternative music. Galing. But this one, I was a Smiths fan forever. Diba? This is this is a compilation essentially for the American market, where every single song I memorized the lyrics, having played this ad infinitum, and I still play it to this day. Almost as soon as I listened to it, I asked Omar if he was selling it. He said, "No, it's mine." So I had to buy my own, to buy it abroad. And I love the Smiths. Brilliant banding, brilliant album, brilliant everything. Yeah. Nakalagay nga sa aking mga bio, di ba? Mga things that I want to do in my life. Reunite the Smiths. Kaso, malabo na. Inamatay na sa kanila. And speaking of guitar bands, because of that, I became a big fan of the children. They, I heard them on NU 107, and Octo came out with a compilation album that featured Kristen. And it was, I think, Brighter was the song on the album, along with Crystal Palace from the Bible. And no, no, hindi pala. The title that the song from the Railway Children that they included was Another Town, the first song in the album. And I guess I remember the compilation album that was put out by Octo Arts, and wow, and malalim, grabe yung boses ng itong Railway Children. Tapos, ang ganda ng melody. They sure know how to write songs. Ang lakas ang dating. Very minimalist din sila, but the album soars, their music soars, and I just love the realization. And pero at the time, it was so hard to get a copy of this. It's so difficult. I couldn't get one, and I only got my copy of this as a compact disc. Sa CD warehouse in Dreamhouse, sa shops with Dreamhouse. And ang mahal. Hindi ko na maalala yung presyo, pero alam ko na mahal siya. No? And then yung actual na plaka, nabili ko na lang sa Hong Kong in 1992. During right around the time where Nirvana exploded. That's when I got this record. This is that same record that I got in Hong Kong. Yep. But look at this. Another Town, diba? Brighter, Big Hands of Freedom. The same. What an incredible album. I mean, and even with Gary Newby and his voice, parang sa Depeche Mode, diba? Ang lalim ng boses, diba? Very bass-oriented. Pero they had that big beat sound. Also in big beat. That big sound that bands like U2, Big Country, The Alarm espoused. And the Railway Children had that. They were a guitar band in the mold of bands like the Lotus Eaters, the Care, mga ganun. And pero ito, emphasis on tremendous melody. And I like their sparse instrumentation that made you really get into the songs. May sipa siya talaga. And yeah, so I've been a fan of Railway Children forever. I have all well, they don't have too many records to begin with, but I have doubles of their albums. Because that's how much I love this band. Very funny din. Sa CD warehouse ko una nabili. CD pa. Pirated. The last of the 12 new wave records from the new wave era that I want to show is this one. Songs from the picture. It's so easy to say, yeah, well, that's a popular or an all-time great. Yes, definitely. But this was such a quantum leap from the Hurricane. And I love the Hurricane, but I love this even more than the Hurricane. This, for me, Songs from the Picture goes hand in hand with the Seeds of Love. It competes for my favorite Tears for Fears album. And some days it's this, some days it's the Seeds of Love. Depende talaga on how I feel at the moment. But this was just a huge departure from their new wave sound from the Hurricane. I mean, look at Everybody Wants to Rule. Timeless song. Diba? Broken, Head Over Heels, Shout. Grabe. This record affected me so much that even my floppy disks computer, I would call them notes from the big chair. So this floppy disk was notes from the big chair one, the other would be notes from the big chair two, or then there would be more notes from the big chair. So I was using that as I would file my floppy disks under that name. And I remember early on, they were yung lumalabas na yung computers, and I would put all the files under that folder, the notes from the big chair. Ganon, I love it. Terrific work by Chris Lewis and David Bascom in the production of this album. And gusto ko rin yung linis niya. Gusto ko talaga yung malinis na may big sounding music. You know, I play this to this day. I remember when this came out on deluxe edition, DVD, CD, DVD. Kinuha ko. And I still have it. It's there. Um, I have a lot of versions of this one, but this is my original record from back in Grabe, talagang, you know, this is the British version. Man, they were so young. Look at- There was so much. When I look at this, it's such an iconic cover. Though it seems normal, we have faces of the band members. And my one regret, sana, was they had Manny Elias and Ian Stanley also. Kahit man sa back, legit members in my band. Diba? Even from yung tinatapos the Hurricane. Pero nakafocus on the duo of Roland and Zabal. I thought that they missed out. They should have done. But definitely those two had a, even Manny Elias, what a drama. What a drama. And I thought those two guys brought another dimension to their short years. Um, I was talking to someone the other day, like, standing on the shoulder of giants and oasis. At the time, at Bobby Line, I thought by bringing Rides Andy Bell, it changed the music also of Oasis. And grabe, I love standing on the shoulder. What people say, love it. So I think the addition of certain person changes. Brilliant is Orzabal and Smith were. Iba yung dinala ng Manny Elias and yung Stanley sa circle. And I love it. So it was a toss-up between this and the Seeds of Love because ang ganda ng Seeds of Love. They had Paleta Adams and that was their album where they discovered America and all the music of America. If for YouTube, it was the Joshua Tree. I think yung Joshua Tree nila ng Years of Years. At the same time, it was their Sergeant Peppers because they're experimenting with brass and the classical sound. But can't go wrong with Songs in the Big Chair. I I love it. So, and these are 12 records that resonated with me back then. And they still do to this day. I mean, again, they are not the best from that era. Maybe some of them are from all-time greats, but I chose records because these were part of my formative years in music and in my young life because I was a teenager. And all these records opened more doors for me musically, and it made me reach new ports of destination. It made me expand my imagination. They were great. And I love these records to this day, and I love these bands. There's this love and affinity for them, and I wanted to share that with you because some of you, you're probably, if you follow me, you would have heard me talk about REM and Murmur and all that. But you will see my posts about the other bands here every morning, especially Cruiser Clears and even Paul Weller. But I've never really elucidated much about the Giants' gift. But again, what an album. And look at the Reggae Colors. Galing, di ba? Ayun. So these are the 12 records and hope what's next. I'll try to do also the 90s version. Again, it's not a best of, but eventually I'll get to that. All-time favorite, blah, blah, blah. Even OPM. I haven't even gotten into OPM. Wait till we get to that. I also want to do my punk and hardcore collection, OPM. My old stuff from the 80s, the mga US East Coast hardcore and West Coast hardcore punk bands from VPN. We'll talk about that some time. hahati-hatiin muna natin. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about these 12 records from the new wave era. Diba? And, should you have any questions about them, you want to talk about them, I'm all ears and I'd love to hear your versions of your 12 records from the 1980s. So this is Rick Olivares. Thanks for listening to Rick's Record Collection, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much and have a good day.